human eyes burned with hate. Semyon felt God's hand move his own as he brought the priest's ceremonial dagger up. The silver blade sank into the creature's throat, and Semyon pulled it across, tearing open windpipe, tendons, and arteries. Its muzzle snapped shut short of Semyon's own throat as hot blood gushed over his arm and face. For a few moments they stared at each other, the brother knight and the demon wolf. In its two human eyes, Semyon thought he saw surprise. It shuddered, breath frothing from the wound in its neck. Then it fell to the side, still. Brother Semyon von Kassel, last survivor of his convent, had survived again. In Brother Semyon's mind, there was now no question of God's providence. Not even when he heard the cry of a human infant coming from the dark hole of the dead creature's burrow. Lauds. Anno Domini, 1239. Os justi meditabitur sapientiam, et lingua eius loquetur judicium. The mouth of the righteous speaketh wisdom, and his tongue talketh of judgment. Psalm 37, verse 30. Chapter 1. Please? Manfred Hartmann did his best to ignore the voice that came from behind the heavy oak door. He stood at attention on the opposite end of the corridor, shivering slightly. Even with his mail shirt and the padding underneath, he was still chilled by the damp, mildew-thick air. But maybe chilled even more by the pathetic weakness of the woman's voice coming from the cell he was guarding. It was hard not to see this guard duty as anything more than a punishment detail. Perhaps, in a more charitable moment, he could think of it as a form of mortification, his Teutonic masters seeing to it that his soul was purified through labor and obedience. Still, despite what the sergeant might say about prisoners of a certain status, there was little about this that Manfred could see as particularly elevating. He certainly didn't feel any closer to God in this hole. If he brought up the subject with one of the priests, or, Lord help him, one of the knights of the order, Manfred knew from long and onerous experience that the answer he would get would involve prayer, penitence, and probably a long meditation on their Lord's suffering on the cross. But by God, if he wanted to say that many paternosters, he would have stayed in Lübeck and joined a monastery. This wasn't to say that he hadn't spent 5 nights down here as a heathen, his back to God. But expecting a soldier to spend the entire night from Compline to Prime in silent contemplation of Christ was expecting a bit much. A bit much, especially with a young woman's voice pleading with him. And thanks to this woman's keeper, province commander of the Teutonic Order, Landkampftur Erhard von Stendhal, and his commandments not to talk to or even look at the prisoner, the boredom was maddening.
Sir, just a word. Some water?
Perhaps the knights of the Order thought their soldiers would fear hell more if they allowed them a foretaste. This was not why Manfred had made the trek north. As the third son of a minor landgrave, very minor, he had only martial skills to trade upon. He had come to the wilds of Prussia as a soldier of Christendom, to defend the church and win new lands and peoples to the way of Christ. He told his mother that he would bring home honor for his family name and possibly gain his own estate in the newly Christian lands of Prussia. He had not thought his crusade might end in this dank corridor, breathing nitre and mold, listening to the echoed pleas of some pagan prisoner. However, by the grace of God, here he was, standing in the bowels of a keep in a town that had honored the cross for 8 years now, guarding a woman who barely had the energy to speak. He wondered at what point he had annoyed God so much as to deserve this fate.
Sir.
Her voice was weaker this time. Even though he had been left here, grating under the command of the Prussian converts left to man this keep, Manfred did know enough to remain obedient. While he had not taken the oaths of a religious order, and was absolved, by law if not by circumstance, from the binds of chastity and poverty, he was still bound by the tenet of obedience. Fealty was expected of all in service to the order, priest and knight, serf and slave, religious and secular. He was not to converse with the prisoner or approach the door. Why this was so was none of his concern. He knew nothing of the prisoner other than